My father pointed at me across a room full of 30 relatives and said the words I'll never forget, "You're grounded." And before I could even process the humiliation, before the laughter died down, a lawyer walked through that door holding papers that would destroy everything my father had built. And I mean everything. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm 27, and what I'm about to tell you happened last Christmas. But the story really starts 6 months earlier when my grandmother died and left behind something nobody expected, least of all me. June 15th, that's when Grandma Helen passed. She was 84, lung cancer, 3 months from diagnosis to goodbye, which honestly felt like mercy because watching her suffer any longer would have broken me. I got the call at work. I was a junior architect at a firm in Chicago, literally in the middle of presenting renderings for a downtown loft renovation when my phone buzzed 4 times in a row. My boss gave me that look. You know the one? Annoyed but trying to be sympathetic, and I excused myself to the hallway, where my Aunt Carol was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "She's gone, Sarah. Your grandma's gone." I drove to Wisconsin that same day, 6 hours straight, no stops, just coffee from a gas station, and the kind of crying where you can't tell if you're sobbing or just breathing wrong. Grandma Helen lived in a small town called Riverton, population 3,000, the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. Her house was this gorgeous Victorian on Maple Street, wraparound porch, turret windows, the whole thing painted butter yellow with white trim. She bought it in 1972 with money she'd saved from teaching piano lessons, and she was so proud of that house, so proud. When I pulled up, there were already a dozen cars in the driveway, and on the street, my father's black Mercedes was parked right in front like he owned the place, which technically he thought he did, or would, or should. My dad is Thomas Mitchell, 61, CFO of a pharmaceutical company, 6'2", salt and pepper hair, always perfectly styled. The kind of man who wears cufflinks to backyard barbecues. He was standing on the porch talking on his phone when I got out of my car. He glanced at me, nodded once, went right back to his conversation. I heard him say probate timeline and asset liquidation before I walked past him into the house. Inside smelled like lemon furniture polish and the faint ghost of her perfume. White shoulders, she'd worn it for 40 years. My mother was in the kitchen with Carol and my Uncle Steve. Red-eyed, holding a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. She hugged me tight, too tight, the way people do when they're trying to transfer their grief into your body, so they don't have to carry all of it alone. I stayed in that hug longer than usual because I knew what was coming. I knew my father was already calculating, already planning, already deciding who deserved what. The funeral was 3 days later, Presbyterian church, white lilies everywhere, a mahogany casket with brass handles that cost more than my car. My father gave the eulogy. He talked for 12 minutes, and I counted about family legacy, about responsibility, about how the Mitchell name stood for something in this community. He mentioned my younger brother Ryan 8 times, Ryan the doctor, Ryan the golden child, Ryan who just finished his residency in neurosurgery and was everything my father had ever wanted. He mentioned my mother twice. He mentioned me exactly 0 times. After the service, during the reception at the church basement, folding tables covered in casseroles and sheet cake, my father's college roommate asked me what I was up to these days. And before I could answer, my dad cut in from behind. "She draws pictures of buildings," he said, and a couple people chuckled politely. I felt my face go hot. I was turning to leave when someone touched my elbow, an older man I didn't recognize, silver hair, navy suit, wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand and said quietly, "Your grandmother spoke about you often. You were her favorite. I'll be calling you soon." And then he disappeared into the crowd before I could ask his name. That night, 20 of us gathered back at Grandma Helen's house for dinner. My father had organized it. The Mitchell family gathering, he called it, as if she was already gone from her own home. The dining room table could seat 12, so they set up a card table in the living room for overflow. I ended up at the card table with Ryan's wife, Jessica, 2 cousins I barely knew, and my 10-year-old nephew, Tyler, who kept kicking the table leg. My father sat at the head of the real table. naturally raised his glass of Cabernet. Mom left everything in good order. He announced, "I'll be managing the estate to ensure her assets are distributed appropriately." He looked directly at me, which means, "Sarah, you don't need to worry your pretty little head about any of this. Money management isn't really your strength anyway." Ryan nodded. Jessica smiled sympathetically. My mother stared at her plate. I set my fork down carefully. "Actually, Dad, Grandma told me she'd taken care of." Mom was confused at the end. He interrupted. "She said a lot of things that didn't make sense. Whatever promises she made, forget them. The adults will handle this." I felt every word land like a slap. But I didn't respond. I just excused myself. Went upstairs to the guest room I'd stayed in 100 times as a kid, the room with the slanted ceiling and the window seat overlooking the garden. And that's when I found the envelope. It was sitting on the pillow, cream-colored paper, heavy stock, my name written in her shaky handwriting. Sarah Michelle Mitchell. I recognized it immediately. Those loops and curls she'd spent 50 years teaching piano students to read music with. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 3 things: a letter, 2 pages, front and back, a partial copy of legal documents, maybe 10 pages, highlighted in yellow in several places, and a small brass key with a tag that said safety deposit box. First National Bank, Riverton. The letter started, "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and your father is already doing exactly what I knew he would do. I'm sorry I couldn't stop him while I was alive. I tried so many times. But men like your father don't listen to women, especially not their mothers. They only listen to lawyers, to courts, to documents with official seals. So that's what I've given you. I've left you something. Several things, actually, that are yours and yours alone. Things he cannot touch, cannot take, cannot diminish with his words or his authority or his certainty that he knows better than everyone else. But you need to be smart about this, smarter than I ever was. Don't tell anyone, not your father, obviously, not Ryan, who loves you but will always choose his father's approval over your well-being, not even your mother. I love Linda dearly. She's been like a daughter to me, but she's been his shadow for so long, she doesn't know how to stand in her own light anymore. She'll tell him, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she's been trained for 35 years to put his needs above everyone else's, including her own, including yours. The documents are with my attorney. His name is Robert Chen. His office is on Main Street above the bakery. You'll like him. He's kind, but he's tough. The kind of lawyer who fights for people, not just for money. The key is for the safety deposit box at the bank. It contains the original will and trust documents. Everything your father is planning to do is illegal. But he'll try anyway because he thinks you won't fight. He thinks you're too nice, too conflict-averse, too afraid of being seen as the difficult daughter. Prove him wrong, sweetheart. Prove him so wrong, he never underestimates another woman again. You're stronger than you know. You're stronger than I was. I let your grandfather push me around for 40 years until he died. I let your father treat me like a checkbook with a pulse. I let this family use me and overlook me and assume I'd always just go along. But you're different. You're the only one who ever really saw me. The only one who visited just because you wanted to see me. Not because you wanted something, not because it was a holiday, just because, do you know how rare that is? How precious. You're my architect, Sarah, the one who builds things that last, the one who sees a space and imagines what it could become. Don't let him tear you down. Don't let him make you small. You were never small. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to be. All my love, always and forever. Grandma Helen, I read it 3 times, then a 4th. Then I held it against my chest and cried so hard, I thought I'd crack a rib, cried for her, for me, for all the years she'd spent being overlooked, for all the times I'd swallowed my anger to keep the peace, for the grandmother who saw me when no one else did and made sure I'd be okay after she was gone. The partial documents showed something called the Helen Marie Keller Irrevocable Trust, her maiden name, beneficiary listed as Sarah Michelle Mitchell. There were account numbers, property descriptions, things I didn't fully understand, but one thing was crystal clear. My father's name appeared nowhere except as trustee, not as beneficiary, Not as heir, only as manager, and even that had restrictions highlighted in yellow. Trustee may not alter beneficiary designation. Trustee may not transfer assets without beneficiary written consent. Trustee must notify beneficiary within 30 days of settler's death. 30 days, I counted backward from June 15th. Today was June 18th, 3 days. He had 27 days left to tell me, and I knew with absolute certainty he never would. I took photos of every page with my phone, backed them up to 3 different cloud services, put the originals back in the envelope, and hid it under the mattress. Then I went downstairs, said goodnight to everyone, and drove back to Chicago. The next morning, Monday, I Googled Robert Chen, attorney, Riverton, Wisconsin. His website came up immediately, solo practice, specializing in estate planning and elder law. A photo showed an Asian man in his 60s with kind eyes and a calm expression, the same man from the funeral. Office hours Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I called at 9:01. A receptionist answered, Chen Law Offices. I gave my name. There was a pause, a click, then a male voice. Sarah, I've been expecting your call. Can you come in this week? I lied to my boss, said I had a family emergency, which wasn't technically a lie, and drove back to Wisconsin on Wednesday. Robert Chen's office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Main Street, right above Millie's Bakery, which had been there since 1952. The whole stairwell smelled like cinnamon rolls and coffee, that warm, yeasty smell that makes you feel like you're walking into someone's kitchen. His office was small, maybe 12 by 14, but it was neat, organized in a way that suggested a mind that kept track of details. Bookshelves full of legal volumes lined one wall. Wisconsin statutes, estate planning guides, case law books with broken spines, and highlighter marks bleeding through the pages. His desk was mahogany old, probably from the 50s, with 2 leather chairs facing it that had been repaired so many times the patches had patches. He stood when I walked in, came around the desk to shake my hand with both of his, not a power move, a gesture of genuine warmth. Your grandmother was one of the finest people I've ever known, he said, and his voice cracked, just slightly on the word finest. Please sit. I'm going to tell you everything, and I do mean everything, because she wanted you to understand exactly what she did and why. He opened a file on his desk, one of those accordion folders, cream-colored, stuffed so full it barely closed. Your grandmother came to see me 9 years ago. He said it was March. I remember, because there was still snow on the ground, and she walked here from her house. Wouldn't let me send a car, said she needed the exercise. She sat right where you're sitting now, and she told me she was afraid, not for herself, for you. She said your father had already started pressuring her, asking about the house, suggesting she sign over the deed to him for, quote, tax purposes, unquote, asking about her bank accounts, her investments, telling her she was getting older and shouldn't have to worry about managing everything. She saw right through it. She knew he wanted control. And she knew once she was gone, he'd try to take everything, not because he needed the money, but because he believed it was his right as the son, as the man, as the one who knew better. She was very specific, very clear about why she wanted to protect you. She said, Sarah is the only one who sees me as a person, not as a resource. She visits me because she wants to, not because she's supposed to. She asks me about my life, about my students, about how I'm feeling. She actually listens to the answers. She's kind. She's thoughtful. She's brilliant. And her father has spent her entire life making her feel like she's none of those things. He paused, took off his glasses, cleaned them with a cloth from his pocket. Your grandmother said, and I quote, I want Sarah to know that someone in this family valued her, that someone saw her potential and wanted to give her the freedom to build the life she deserves. I don't want her beholden to Thomas. I don't want her having to beg him for access to money that should be hers. I don't want her diminished one more day of her life. End quote. I wrote it down because it was important. He slid a document across the desk, the original trust, cream-colored paper, thicker than normal, with a notary seal in the bottom right corner, red and raised, official. I could see the signatures. My grandmother's in her careful teacher's handwriting, Robert Chen's in black ink, 2 witnesses I didn't recognize, and the date, March 14th, 9 years ago, I was 18, just finishing my senior year of high school. I had no idea. The trust contains 4 things, he said, counting them on his fingers. First, $500,000 in a diversified investment portfolio currently managed by Merrill Lynch. Your grandmother was frugal Sarah. She taught piano for 53 years, charged $30 an hour when most teachers charged $50. Never raised her rates because she said music should be accessible. She drove the same car for 20 years, a Toyota Camry. She mended her own clothes, grew her own vegetables. She didn't deny herself, she just didn't waste. And she invested every spare dollar she had because she wanted to leave you security. Second, this house, the Victorian on Maple Street, currently valued at approximately $450,000. She bought it in 1972 with inheritance money from her mother, paid cash, never took out a mortgage. It's been hers, entirely hers, for over 50 years. Your father has never owned a single brick of that house. Though I don't think he knows that, or if he does, he's chosen to forget. Third, a life insurance policy with you as beneficiary, $200,000. She took it out 12 years ago when you were 15, named you then, never changed it. Fourth, all personal property including furniture, artwork, jewelry, her wedding ring, her mother's china, every photograph, every book, every piece of sheet music, and her piano, the Steinway. She specifically mentioned the piano, said she hoped you'd learn to play someday, but even if you didn't, she wanted you to have it because it represented all the years she spent teaching, all the students she loved, all the music that filled her life. I stared at him, trying to process the numbers, the details, the fact that she'd planned this when I was still a teenager. I did the math in my head, that's over $1 million. He nodded slowly, 1.15 million approximately. Your grandmother was a very frugal woman. She lived modestly. She never married after your grandfather died, never traveled extravagantly, never bought anything she didn't need, and she wanted you to have security. Sarah, she wanted you to build the life you dream about without being beholden to anyone, especially not your father. But here's the problem. His expression darkened. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Your father filed a petition with the probate court last Friday, June 19th, 4 days after her death, requesting to be named executor and sole heir of her estate. He listed the house, the bank accounts, her personal property, everything. He submitted an affidavit to the court stating that he conducted a diligent search for other potential heirs and was, quote, unable to locate any living beneficiaries other than himself and his brother Stephen, end quote. My stomach dropped. I felt the floor tilt. Unable to locate me. I repeated, my phone number hasn't changed in 10 years. He knows where I live. He knows where I work. He has my email. We had dinner at his house 4 days ago. Exactly, Chen said. And that's where this crosses from questionable judgment into fraud. He's required by law as trustee to notify you within 30 days of your grandmother's death. He's required to provide you with a copy of the trust. He's required to account for all assets and explain how they'll be distributed. He's done none of that, and based on the petition he filed with the court, he has no intention of doing any of it. His plan is to liquidate everything, transfer it to himself and your brother, and hope you never find out. I felt dizzy. Can he do that? Legally, no, Chen said. Practically, if you don't fight it, yes, the court doesn't know you exist as a beneficiary. Your father is a respected businessman. He has lawyers. He has credibility. If you don't show up an object, the judge will grant his petition, and by the time you find out, it'll be too late to undo. So what do? You file a counter petition. Chen said, you provide the court with the original trust documents. You prove your grandmother was of sound mind when she executed the trust. And you request that your father be removed as trustee for breach of duty. I can do all of that for you, but I need your permission to proceed. I thought about my father at the funeral, talking about legacy and responsibility. I thought about him at dinner, telling me not to worry my pretty little head. I thought about 27 years of being dismissed, diminished, treated like I was decorative instead of capable. Yes, I said, do it. Chen nodded. One more thing. Your father is planning a big family Christmas gathering. He sent out invitations last week. He's invited over 30 people, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. I think he's planning to announce the estate distribution then. Make it public so you'll be too embarrassed to fight. How do you know that? Your grandmother's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, told me. She's friends with your Aunt Carol. Apparently your father called Carol specifically to make sure you'd be there. He wants an audience. I felt something cold settle in my chest. When is it? December 23rd? Chen said, that gives us 6 months to prepare. I'm going to file the counter petition this week. Your father will be served with notice. He'll know you're fighting. Are you ready for that? I looked at the trust document, at my grandmother's signature, at the word sole beneficiary. I'm ready. The next 6 months were a blur. I threw myself into work, finished the loft renovation project, started 2 new ones, a community center on the south side, and a residential remodel in Lincoln Park. I was pulling 60-hour weeks because staying busy meant not thinking about what was coming. But every Friday, like clockwork, I get an email from Robert Chen with updates. June 28th, counter petition filed. July 3rd, your father's attorney responded requesting dismissal. Grounds insufficient evidence. July 15th, court denied dismissal. Ordered both parties to mediation. August 9th, mediation scheduled for September 14th. The mediation was a disaster. My father showed up with 2 lawyers, both in $1,000 suits. I had Robert Chen, who wore a suit from JCPenney and carried a briefcase older than me, but he had something they didn't. The truth. We sat in a conference room at the courthouse. A mediator, a retired judge named Barbara Klein, presided. She was maybe 70, silver hair in a bun, reading glasses on a chain. She looked at the documents for 45 minutes without speaking. Then she looked at my father, Mr. Mitchell. Did you or did you not receive a copy of this trust when your mother executed it 9 years ago? My father's lead attorney, a man named Whitmore, started to answer. Judge Klein cut him off. I asked Mr. Mitchell. My father cleared his throat. I may have received something. I don't recall the specific details. It was a long time ago. Judge Klein looked at him over her glasses. It's notarized. It lists you as trustee. It outlines your duties. You signed an acknowledgement of receipt. So either you're lying or you have a severe memory problem, which is it. The room went silent. My father's face turned red. Whitmore jumped in. Your Honor, my client. I'm not a judge anymore, Mr. Whitmore. Klein said, I'm a mediator. And what I'm mediating here is whether your client committed fraud. The evidence suggests he did. She turned to Chen. Chen, what's your client seeking? Removal of Mr. Mitchell as trustee. Chen said, transfer of all assets to Miss Mitchell as outlined in the trust, and a formal investigation into whether Mr. Mitchell violated his fiduciary duties. Klein nodded. I'm recommending the court grant all of that, Mr. Mitchell. You have 30 days to transfer everything. If you don't, I'll personally call the State Bar and the Attorney General's office. Do you understand? My father stood up. This is outrageous. My mother was mentally incompetent. When she signed that, Klein didn't even look up. She was evaluated by her physician the same week she signed, Dr. Raymond Liu. He's still practicing. I called him yesterday. He confirmed she was fully competent. She scored higher on cognitive tests than most people her age. Try again. My father walked out. His lawyers scrambled to follow. Whitmore turned back. We'll see you in court. Klein smiled. No, you won't, because you'll lose and you know it. October brought the first real cold snap, and with it, a series of emails from my father's lawyer, requests for extensions, motions to reconsider, procedural delays. Chen batted them all down. By November, the court had officially removed my father as trustee and appointed a temporary third-party administrator until I could take over. The house, the money, the insurance, all of it was frozen. Nobody could touch it. My father was furious. I know because Ryan called me. Sarah, what are you doing? You're tearing this family apart. I'm protecting what Grandma left me. I said, she wanted me to have it. Dad was supposed to manage it. Ryan said, he knows what he's doing. He's a CFO. He was supposed to steal it, you mean? I have the emails, Ryan. He told his lawyer I was, quote, financially irresponsible and shouldn't be trusted with money. He lied to the court. He committed fraud. Ryan was quiet for a long time. Then, Dad's asking everyone to come to Christmas. He wants to fix this. He wants to fix it by making me look like the bad guy in front of everyone. No thanks. Sarah, please, he's our father. And I'm his daughter, I said, but he's never treated me like one. I hung up. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Your father really wants you at Christmas. I know, Mom. I'm coming, you are. She sounded surprised. Yeah, I said, because I'm done hiding. December 23rd, I packed a bag. My nicest clothes, a black sheath dress, heels, a wool coat. The kind of outfit that says, I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to set the record straight. I printed copies of everything. The trust, the court orders, the emails between my father and his lawyers, the emails where he called me financially irresponsive, where he said I'd never fight, where he planned to, quote, handle Sarah quietly. I put it all in a leather portfolio, drove to Riverton, checked into a hotel because there was no way I was staying at my father's house, and texted Robert Chen, I'm here. The Mitchell family Christmas party started at 4. By 3:30, cars were already lining the street. I recognized my Uncle Steve's Tahoe, Aunt Carol's Prius, cousins I hadn't seen in years, SUVs and sedans and minivans, the whole extended family, 32 people. Chen texted me, I'm parked 2 blocks away. You go in first. I'll come when you're ready. I walked up to the front door, my childhood home. A brick colonial in a subdivision. My mother opened the door, hugged me like she was afraid I'd shatter. You look beautiful, she whispered. Don't let him make you small. I won't, Mom. Inside was chaos, kids running, Christmas music playing, the smell of ham and cinnamon. My father was in the living room, surrounded by people, holding court like always. He saw me. His expression flickered, surprise, then annoyance, then a carefully constructed smile. Sarah, you made it. I wasn't sure you'd show. I'm full of surprises, Dad. The room was set up with chairs facing the fireplace, like a presentation. A table next to the fireplace had stacks of papers. I could see letterhead, Mitchell Family Estate Distribution. He was really going to do it, announce his fake version in front of everyone. At 4:15, my father stood, tapped a glass with a fork. Everyone, thank you for coming. As you know, we lost Mom this year. It's been hard, but the Mitchell family endures. And I want to take a moment to share how we'll be honoring her legacy. He picked up the papers. Mom left a detailed will, and I've worked with our attorneys to ensure everything is distributed according to her wishes. The house will be sold, proceeds divided among her children. That's me and Uncle Steve. The investment accounts will be placed in a trust for the grandchildren, Ryan and his kids, and any remaining assets will go toward a scholarship in her name. He paused for effect. People clapped. I stood up, actually, Dad, that's not what Grandma wanted. The room went quiet. My father's smile tightened. Sarah, this isn't the time, you're right. It's not, I said. But you made it the time by lying to everyone here. I turned to face the room. My grandmother left everything to me. All of it. The house, the money, the investments. She created an irrevocable trust 9 years ago, naming me as the sole beneficiary. My father knew about it. He signed documents acknowledging it. And then after she died, he filed a petition with the court claiming he couldn't find me, claiming I didn't exist, so he could take everything for himself. My Aunt Carol stood up. Sarah, is that true? I opened the portfolio, pulled out the court orders, the trust document, the emails. I have proof. I said, and before anyone tries to say Grandma was confused. She was evaluated by her doctor the same week she signed the trust. She was completely competent. The court already ruled in my favor. My father was removed as trustee for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. All of this, I pointed at his papers, is fake. The room erupted. Uncle Steve demanded to see the documents. Ryan looked like he'd been punched. Jessica pulled out her phone, probably to Google whether this was real. My mother was crying. My father, his face went from red to purple. You have no right, he started. I have every right. I cut him off. She was my grandmother. She chose me, not you, not Ryan, me. And you couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand that she saw something in me that you never did. That's when he said it. His voice rising to that pitch it gets when he's lost control, but still thinks he can regain it by being louder. He pointed his finger across the room. arm fully extended like a prosecutor in a courtroom drama, and with 32 people watching, with my mother covering her mouth, with Ryan frozen mid-sip of his wine, my father looked at me and said the words that will define him forever in my memory. "You're grounded. Go to your room right now. You are grounded until you apologize to me and this entire family for this embarrassment." The room went dead silent, not the kind of silence where people are listening, the kind where people are trying to decide if what they just heard actually happened. Then someone laughed. It was my cousin David. Couldn't help himself. Nervous disbelief. Then another laugh from someone in the back. Then Aunt Carol made a sound that was half gasp, half chuckle. And my Uncle Steve said out loud what everyone was thinking. "She's 27, Tom. You can't ground her. She's a grown woman." My father's hand was shaking, the pointing finger trembling in the air. "She's disrespecting me in my own home," he said. And there was something desperate in his voice now. Something cracking. "This is my house. These are my rules. And she will follow them or leave." The absurdity of it hit everyone at once. Grounding a 27-year-old woman who just proved in front of witnesses that he committed fraud. It was so wildly inappropriate, so detached from reality, that it revealed everything about how he saw me, how he'd always seen me as a child to control, not a person to respect. "No, Dad," I said, and my voice was steady, calm, almost gentle, because I didn't need to yell. "I'm telling the truth in a room full of people you tried to lie to. There's a difference. You've lied to them. You've lied to the court. You've lied to yourself. And the only person who's embarrassed here is you, because everyone in this room now knows exactly who you are." The front door opened behind me. I didn't turn around. I knew who it was. Robert Chen walked in, navy suit, briefcase. He nodded to me, then looked at my father, "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Robert Chen, attorney for the estate of Helen Marie Keller. I have the original trust documents here, notarized and filed with the court. I also have copies of your petition to the probate court, where you falsely claimed you were unable to locate your daughter. That's fraud, and I have emails between you and your attorney where you discussed, quote, managing Sarah's expectations and ensuring she doesn't interfere. That's conspiracy and breach of fiduciary duty." He set the briefcase on the table, opened it, pulled out a stack of papers. "I'm here to formally notify you and everyone present that Sarah Mitchell is the sole legal heir to her grandmother's estate. Any distribution plan you've created is void. The court has already ruled. If you continue to contest this, I will pursue criminal charges. Do you understand?" My father looked at the room, at the faces staring at him, at Aunt Carol, who was shaking her head, at Uncle Steve, who looked disgusted, at Ryan, who couldn't meet his eyes. Then he looked at me. "You've destroyed this family," he said, his voice breaking. "No, Dad," I said. "You did. I just told the truth." He walked out, slammed the door to his office. The room sat in stunned silence for a full minute. Then Aunt Carol came over, hugged me tight. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. We had no idea." Uncle Steve shook Chen's hand. "Thank you for protecting her." My mother stood up, walked over, took both my hands in hers. "I should have protected you," she said. "I should have stood up to him years ago." "I'm so sorry, baby." "It's okay, Mom," I said. "But I need you to start choosing me, not him. Can you do that?" She nodded, tears streaming. "I will, I promise." Ryan approached slowly. "Sarah, I don't." I said, "You knew. You had to know something was wrong." He looked at the floor. "Dad said you were being difficult, that you didn't understand the legal stuff, so you believed him." I said, "Even though you're a doctor, even though you're supposed to be smart enough to question things, you just believed him because it was easier." Ryan's jaw clenched. "I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," I said, "but it's a start." Chen and I left 20 minutes later. I didn't stay for dinner, didn't stay for dessert, didn't stay to watch my father's crumble any more than it already had. I drove back to Chicago that night. 6 hours of dark highway and Christmas radio stations, playing songs about family and coming home. And I thought about what home even meant. It's not a place, it's not a building. It's the people who see you, really see you, and choose to protect you. January 5th, I met with the estate administrator, a woman named Patricia Gordon, who'd been handling estates for 30 years. We sat in her office, pale gray walls, photos of her grandkids on the desk, and she slid a stack of papers across to me. These are the final transfer documents. She said, once you sign, everything becomes yours. No contingencies, no waiting period, just yours. I picked up the pen, a cheap ballpoint that probably came from a bank, and I hesitated, not because I was unsure, but because I was trying to absorb the moment. This was it. The thing my father had tried to prevent, the thing my grandmother had spent 9 years protecting. I signed my name 7 times. Each signature felt like a small revolution. The house was officially mine, the Victorian on Maple Street with the wraparound porch and the turret windows, $500,000 in investments. Mine. Sitting in accounts at Merrill Lynch, earning interest, growing $200,000 life insurance. Mine, already transferred, already in my bank account, making the numbers look surreal. Patricia shook my hand. Congratulations, she said. Your grandmother would be very proud. I nodded, couldn't speak, just nodded, and walked out into the January cold. I sold the house in March, listed it with a realtor named Donna, who'd known my grandmother from church. Couldn't stand the idea of living there. Couldn't imagine walking through those rooms without hearing my father's voice echoing off the walls, telling me what I couldn't do, what I wasn't capable of, what I'd never understand. Donna sold it in 2 weeks, multiple offers. I accepted one from a young family, a husband and wife with twin toddlers who loved the porch and the big backyard. I signed the closing papers and felt nothing but relief. I used the money to start my own architecture firm, Mitchell Design Collaborative. The name felt right, collaborative, like I was building something with people, not over them. I hired 2 junior architects, Amanda and Marcus, both recent grads from University of Illinois, hungry, talented, full of ideas I could nurture instead of crush. I leased office space in a converted warehouse in the West Loop. Exposed brick, high ceilings, huge windows that let in light from 3 directions. It felt like the opposite of my father's world. Open instead of closed, bright instead of shadowed, full of possibility instead of limits. I kept the piano, though. Grandma's baby grand Steinway, model and built in 1968. The year she got married. It's in my apartment now, taking up most of my living room. I don't play. Never learned. She offered to teach me 100 times when I was a kid, but I was always too busy, too distracted, too convinced I had time. I regret that now, but I keep it tuned. Pay a guy named Leonard to come every 6 months. He's probably 70, gentle hands. He tunes it and tells me stories about the old days when every middle-class house had a piano. Sometimes I just sit on the bench and put my hands on the keys and think about her, about all the students who sat here, all the scales and arpeggios and Chopin preludes that came out of this instrument, all the patience she had, all the love. My father and I haven't spoken since Christmas. That day in his living room was the last time I heard his voice directed at me. He sends emails through his lawyer occasionally. Accusations mostly, claiming I manipulated my grandmother, that I took advantage of her declining mental state, even though the court already ruled she was fully competent. Even though Dr. Lou's evaluation is a matter of public record, sometimes the emails are threats, vague legal language about contesting the trust, about pursuing alternative remedies, about protecting the family's interests. Robert Chen handles them all, sends back polite, professional responses that essentially say, bring it. We're ready, you'll lose. My mother calls every Sunday, like clockwork, usually around 10 in the morning after she's had her coffee and read the newspaper. The first few calls were hard, a lot of crying on both sides, a lot of I'm sorry and I should have and why didn't I? But we're working on it now, rebuilding something that looks less like a relationship built on fear and silence and more like one built on honesty and mutual respect. She left my father in April, moved into a condo in Milwaukee, got a job at a library part-time, shelving books, helping people find things. She says it's peaceful. She says for the first time in 35 years she can breathe. We meet for lunch once a month, halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee. There's a diner in Kenosha that makes good pie. We sit in a booth by the window and talk about normal things, her book club, my projects, the weather, safe topics. But sometimes we talk about the hard stuff too, like the time she admitted she knew my father was lying about the trust. She'd seen documents, overheard phone calls. But she didn't say anything because she was afraid. Afraid of his anger, afraid of being alone, afraid of losing the life she'd built even if that life was making her miserable. I don't blame you, Mom, I told her. I understand fear, but I need you to choose differently now. Can you do that? And she said, yes. I'm trying, that's all I can ask. Ryan reached out in April, sent me a text. Can we talk? Just the two of us. No lawyers, no dad. I said yes. We met at a Starbucks halfway between our apartments, neutral territory. He got there first, was already sitting at a corner table when I walked in. Tall coffee, black, hands wrapped around the cup like he was cold, even though it was 60 degrees outside. I sat down, ordered nothing, just looked at him, waiting. He talked for 3 hours and I barely said a word, just listened. He apologized, really apologized. Not the kind of apology where someone says, I'm sorry you feel that way. The real kind, the kind where he took responsibility for his actions, for his complicity, for all the years he stood next to Dad and let him diminish me, let him dismiss me, let him treat me like I was less than. He said he'd been complicit in Dad's behavior his whole life because it was easier to be the golden child than to question why I was always the scapegoat. Easier to accept the praise than to notice it only existed in contrast to my criticism. He said he knew, somewhere deep down, that the way Dad treated me wasn't right. But he convinced himself it wasn't his problem, that I was strong enough to handle it, that I didn't need his protection, which was just another way of saying he didn't want to risk his position by defending me. He said watching what happened at Christmas broke something in him. Seeing Dad try to ground me like I was a child, seeing the whole family witness his fraud, seeing Mom finally stand up and him still refusing to back down, it made him realize he'd been enabling a man who cared more about control than his own children. I appreciated the apology. I told him, but trust takes time. You can't undo 27 years of being his accomplice with one conversation. He understood. He said he wasn't asking for forgiveness, just a chance to do better. We meet for coffee once a month now, same Starbucks, same corner table. We talk about work, about his kids, about life. It's not what it was when we were young, when we actually liked each other before Dad turned us into competitors. But it's something, it's a start, and maybe that's enough. Aunt Carol and Uncle Steve invited me to Thanksgiving, their house in Madison. They said the whole family was coming, everyone except my father, 17 people. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Carol's sister from Denver. Steve's brother from Minneapolis. I almost said no. The idea of another family gathering so soon after Christmas felt overwhelming. But Carol called me personally. Please come, Sarah. She said, we want you to know you're part of this family, not because of your father, but in spite of him, so I went. It was the first holiday meal where I didn't feel like I had to perform, where I didn't have to measure every word before I spoke, where I could just be. Carol put me at the main table, right in the middle, not at the end, not at the kids' table. The middle where I could see everyone and everyone could see me. We ate turkey and sweet potatoes and green bean casserole. And when it was time to go around and say what we were grateful for, I said, I'm grateful for the people who see me, really see me, and choose to protect me even when it costs them something. The whole table got quiet. Then Carol raised her glass. To Helen, she said, and to Sarah, and everyone drank. June 15th came again, 1 year since Grandma died. I took the day off work, told Amanda and Marcus I had personal business, drove to Riverton for the first time since I'd sold the house, went straight to Oak Hill Cemetery on the east side of town. Her grave was in Section C, row 7. Under a maple tree that was probably planted the same year she was born, simple headstone, gray granite, Helen Mary Keller, beloved teacher, grandmother, friend, 1938 to 2023. I brought peonies, her absolute favorite, pale pink, the kind that smell like roses and lemons mixed together. I bought them from a florist in Chicago, paid extra to make sure they were fresh, sat on the grass next to her grave, didn't care that it was damp. Didn't care that I was wearing nice jeans, just sat and arranged the flowers in the built-in vase and started talking. I told her everything, every detail about the firm, about Amanda and Marcus, and how they remind me of me at that age. hungry and scared and desperate to prove themselves. About the projects we're working on, the community center on the south side that's going to have a library and a gym and an art studio. About the house I'm designing for a young couple in Evanston who wants something modern but warm. Lots of windows, lots of light. I told her about Mom leaving Dad, about the condo in Milwaukee, about our monthly lunches, and how she's slowly becoming someone I recognize again, someone who laughs, someone who has opinions. I told her about Ryan, about our coffee meetings, about how he's trying but it's hard, about how some damage takes years to undo. I told her about the piano, about how it's in my living room taking up so much space I can barely walk around it, but I don't care, I love it. I love that every time I walk past, I think of her. I told her I'm sorry I never learned to play, sorry I was too busy or too stubborn or too convinced I had more time. But I'm thinking about taking lessons, maybe someday. Then I told her the thing I'd been holding in my chest for a year, the thing I couldn't say to anyone else. I told her I understood now, why she did it, not just the trust, but the secrecy, the planning, the 9 years of keeping it quiet, and letting Dad think he'd won. She knew he would fight, knew he'd use every weapon he had, his money, his lawyers, his reputation, his ability to make people believe his version of events. And she made sure I had more ammunition, not just money, but proof, documentation, legal standing. She gave me the ability to fight back without having to beg, without having to convince anyone I was worthy. She gave me that in writing, with a notary seal. And that's love. Not the Hallmark card kind, the real kind, the kind that hires a lawyer and signs papers and thinks a decade ahead because she knew she wouldn't be there to protect me herself. I sat there for 2 hours, talking and crying and watching the sun move across the sky. A few other people came and went, visiting their own dead, leaving their own flowers. A man in his 80s putting roses on his wife's grave 3 rows over. A young woman, maybe early 20s, crying at a headstone that had a birth year and a death year only 2 years apart. I wondered about their stories, their losses, their regrets. Grief is so universal and so private at the same time. We're all doing it all the time in 1,000 different ways. When I finally stood up to leave, my knees stiff from sitting, my jeans soaked through, I pressed my hand flat against her headstone. The granite was warm from the sun, and I said out loud, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for giving me the tools to fight when you knew you wouldn't be there to fight for me. I promise I won't waste it. I promise I'll build something worth building. I love you, Grandma. And then I walked back to my car and drove home. I'm telling you this from my office. It's a Saturday, I'm alone, working on renderings for a community theater. The sun is coming through the big industrial windows. My coffee's gone cold. I've got Bon Iver playing low. And I keep thinking about that moment in my father's living room when he pointed at me and said, "You're grounded." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. Not because it was true, but because it was so absurd, it revealed everything. He still saw me as a child, someone he could control, someone who would obey. But I'm not that person. Maybe I never was. I was just someone who hadn't been given permission to fight yet. Grandma gave me that permission in writing with a notary seal. Here's what I want you to take from this. If someone in your family is treating you like you're less than, if someone is making decisions about your life without you, if someone is taking what's rightfully yours and telling you to be quiet about it, document everything, find your proof, hire a lawyer if you need to. And when the moment comes, when they're standing in front of everyone performing their version of reality, you walk in with the truth and you burn it all down. Not because you're vengeful, but because you deserve to be seen, you deserve to be protected, you deserve to inherit what was meant for you. Whether that's money or a house, or just the knowledge that someone believed in you enough to fight for you when you couldn't fight for yourself. My grandmother saw me, the real me, the one who wanted to build things, and she built something for me, a foundation I could stand on when the ground was pulled out from under me. That's the inheritance that saved my life. Not the money, the proof that I was worth protecting. I still have her letter. I keep it in my desk drawer. Sometimes I pull it out and read it. You're my architect, Sarah. The one who builds things. Don't let him tear you down. She knew. 9 years before it happened. She knew exactly what he'd try to do. And she made sure I'd survive it. I did more than survive. I'm building, every day, one brick at a time, a life that's mine, a business that's mine, a future that nobody can take from me, because I have the paperwork to prove it. Thank you for staying until the very end. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of your own family, your own fight, your own moment when you had to choose between staying quiet and speaking up, then hit that like button, subscribe if you want more stories like this, and drop a comment telling me what you'd do if you were in my shoes. Because here's the thing, we all have a moment like this eventually. A moment when someone tries to make us smaller. And the question is, do you let them or do you show up with receipts? I showed up with receipts, and I do it again, every single time. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and that was the last time anyone in my family tried to ground me.